welcome to the first day of Vlogmas. As the title suggests, these are the books that I have been loving this year. They weren't necessarily published this year, but they're just the ones I've read and I've thoroughly enjoyed. So I thought I would come on here and talk to you about those. Nearly all these books are history heavy because that's what I love to read. But there are non-fiction and fiction books to go through. I hope you enjoy. My first book choice is The Anglo-Saxons by Marc. This book begins its history after the fall of the Roman Empire, or after the Romans have left Britain. It is a chaotic place, and the book travels through all the different rulers which have shaped and impacted Britain. If you enjoyed the Bernard Cornwall stories about Uhtred, you'll definitely enjoy reading about the facts that surround all of that history. It is so interesting and I would definitely recommend. The next non-fiction history book I would recommend is Femina by Janina Remirez. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Moving on from the Middle Ages, and this book is focused more on the lives of women throughout the medieval period. I found this book incredibly interesting. Firstly, because there are women mentioned here that I've never heard about before. I imagine if you study history academically, then in all likelihood you have come across these women. But for me, it was a revelation and I found it absolutely fascinating. Secondly, it made me think about the lives of women and the opportunities or lack of they had of them. For instance, becoming a nun could have been seen as a career choice. It also brings home when England separated from the Roman Church, the impact that that would have had on women's lives who were devoted to the church and their work and their purpose and their charities. It must have been really, really difficult, and this book makes you question those long-held beliefs that the church wasn't doing any good for anyone, or the Roman Church wasn't doing any good for anyone. It changes your perception of all of that. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This is my last non-fiction favourite book of this year. It's by Justine Picardie, I think is how you pronounce her surname. It's called Miss Dior. This book I found so incredibly haunting. It really stays with you, and even now I think, I can't remember when I read it this year, probably near the beginning of it, and it just the feeling of it just stays within me. It's about Catherine Dior, Christian Dior's sister, and she joins the French resistance, gets captured and put into a concentration camp. It is a deeply upsetting story. Even though she comes out of it, you feel the trauma that lays within her afterwards, forever scarring her. It is a fascinating read, but I would say a very haunting read as well. On to my favourite fiction this year. I have just recently read It's Alchemy by S.J. Parris. I love anything to do with Elizabethan England. I find it absolutely fascinating. This book is the latest book published in a series of stories about a character called Bruno. He was an Italian monk. He came to England to work for the Elizabethan government as a spy. And in this book, he finds himself in Prague. He has been sent by the English government to find the astronomer John Dee. Here, Bruno gets caught up in the politics of the Roman Emperor Rudolph II. His court is all for scientists, alchemists, astrologers, and the Catholic Church want to curtail some of this enthusiasm. So Bruno gets caught up in this. John Dee has gone missing and he has to find it. And on top of that, there is also a murder. This is definitely a very gripping and exciting read. And my last favourite fiction book that I read this year is The Language of Food by Annabelle Abbs. If you love food history, you'll definitely enjoy this novel. It's a fictionalised life of Eliza Acton, who was a 19th century home cook. The story begins with her wanting to become a writer, realising that there's not much enthusiasm for her poetry, and deciding that she would try something else in order to get a name for herself. This leads to writing recipes. One problem, she doesn't cook. So it's her story discovering food. And it is really, really lovely. I would recommend this read. Right, and that is all the books. You wouldn't believe that it is 10:30 in the morning. It is so dark outside. It's getting really cold here in the UK. I guess we're ready for Christmas. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.